All right, we're going to keep this weekend online clinic rolling. Now we have Coach Steve Smith here. He's going to talk about a side of the ball that doesn't get talked about enough, maybe some special teams. Coach, thanks for being here, and the floor is yours.
Well, Coach Steve, first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's great to be able to sit in this forum and talk about teams, because a lot of times, like during we're all in the midst of clinic season, right? And so every time we go to a clinic, we talk about offense. We talk about offensive play, defensive play, but the one thing that always gets ignored in that is special teams, because a lot of us, and it's no knock against anybody. It's just in my past experience. A lot of times we as coaches, we kind of push teams off to the side. And it's like, it's the back third of the game. Defense wins championships, offense is there for show. But really, man, look, special teams, we kind of put everybody in a position to score or to defend. Okay. So, I've been fortunate enough to be able to coach on both sides of the ball and coach in all three phases. In the short period of time that I've been in coaching, and I've kind of taken the teams a little bit because it's something about special teams that I love. So, so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to get this party started. We're just getting ready for Mardi Gras here in the Crescent City. It's Mardi Gras is next Tuesday, so we're looking forward to the world seeing what we do. Every place else, it's just Tuesday, but here in NOLA, it's Mardi Gras. So, so let's get into it here. So, like I said, my name's Stephen Smith. Last season, I was the special teams coordinator and offensive line coach at Haynes Academy for Advanced Studies here in Metairie, Louisiana. I lived in Ponchatoula. Here's my contact information if anybody wants to get in touch with me and talk teams. I'm on X. I'm on Threads as at the Steve Smith, which I got to credit my buddy Chris McEwen, who was twice my head coach that I had a pleasure to once work under and then coach under the following season. He said, "There goes the Steve Smith." So I gotta give a special nod to my boy. So then you can hit me up on email. It's Coach Stephen Smith. That's STEVEN Smith, common spelling, LA@gmail.com, and my phone number right there. So we're going to get into shield punt. Okay. So a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm currently living in Ponchatoula, Louisiana with my wife and the two littles that you see in that picture. My daughter, Charlie, who's on my left there, she's 16 and she lives with her mom. I was at Haynes Academy this past season here in Metairie for Advanced Studies, Haynes Academy for Advanced Studies. We're a 3A school. We're split into select and non-select schools here in Louisiana. So we were select Division II. We won our district. We went 9-0. I'm as the offensive line coach and what I call the head of the moving company. We had a 2,000-yard rusher, 2,000-plus yard rusher in Lachlan Clavery that we had the honor to block for this season. He was first team All-State, and he was our district's offensive MVP. So I've also coached 4A ball in South Carolina, where I was a special teams coordinator at Darlington. I got my start here in the high school end at Riverdale and Jefferson. And as you can see there, there wasn't a position I didn't coach, I don't think, in that season. I coached on both sides of the ball in my first season in 15 and then wound up coordinating teams in 16. And then I got my start, oddly enough, in pro indoor football with my buddy Chris, who I worked for in 2011 as his special teams coordinator in Knoxville in the Southern Indoor Football League. And I've pretty much done everything you can do in this job, in this industry, from being the general manager to the field maintenance guy to the trash collector to being a ball coach, equipment guy. Yeah, I've pretty much done it all. So, and I've literally done it from every level. I currently work for the Jefferson Parish Recreation Department during the day, where I'm the athletic equipment specialist. So basically, I'm the equipment manager for the department. So yeah, I can literally say I've done everything in this business. So we're going to talk first about the punt, how to identify what type of punt systems people use. So this is what you see on Sundays. It's called the Pro Punt. In it, there are two wings with a personal protector, usually set about 6 to 7 yards. and he's going to be to the backside right of the long snapper, like kind of sitting in what would be the positive A gap with the punter's heels basically at 15 yards, and then two gunners split out. So you see in the picture at the top how, and this is from the Saints Falcons from a few years ago. I think this is 2020 or 21. I think this was 21. So, you can see how the splits work, where the gunners are sitting below the numbers, two wings and the personal protector. And that's Thomas Morstead in the end zone. He was punting for the Saints at the time. And we talk about the gaps, as you can see, A, B, C, and D, positive and negative on the right and left side of the line there, and with the wing as well. So let me get my happy laser pointer so we can see everything. There we go. All right.
Coach, for some reason I can only see your first slide. I don't know why we can't see the other ones.
Huh. Okay. Let me swap. Escape.
Ah, there we go.
Okay. Let's see if I go. Okay, I guess I just have to do it like this then, huh? Let's see how that looks. How's that? A little bit better?
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, it just wasn't
All right.
changing slides. So when you were talking, it didn't show.
Okay, so if I go back,
There, now it's changing. There we go. All right.
all right, cool. So I go back. There we go. We see that. There's my contact info.
Yep.
All right, there's me again with my kiddos. And now we're going to the tight wing.
Perfect.
All right, cool beans. So I don't know how many people run this. I haven't come across it very much at the high school level here. So basically what tight wing is you're taking what would be the personal protector, or the gunner, or like the up backs in this case, and you're basically shoving them in the A gaps. And here, this is South Florence at Myrtle Beach, and you can see how Myrtle Beach has their two wings like kind of shoved up in the line right here, right? So the gunner's like actually at what would be the tight end positions. Okay. So this is what I kind of refer to as a spread punt formation. This is South Florence against us at Darlington in 2019 from this picture. And basically the way they set up is they have the two gunners here with two tight ends. The personal protector kind of set at about 6, and then the kicker with his heels at 15. Okay. Then we get into like what we see every Saturday now, and that's shield punt. Okay. This is the most commonly used, I would say 9 out of 10 college football teams. And it doesn't matter whether it's the NCAA, NAIA, or the JUCO, or you're pretty much going to see this everywhere you go. Okay. So these two stills here. This still here is from LSU and Arkansas back in 2021, I think. And the reason why this is like a standard shield punt formation, okay, where you basically have what I would call an X and a Z, or two tight ends, the two shield players, and the personal protector. In this case right here, the left and the right shield, their toes are basically at 6 yards, 7 yards, with the personal protector, on the inside hip of the right shield. And then after the ball was snapped, when we start getting into phase, then he slides right here into the alley. Okay. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And the gaps are all the same. Like how we coach offensive line, we use A gap, B gap. We coach D line, A back, A gap, B gap. It's the same thing. And you'll see that here in a few minutes. I call this a wide shield, and you're kind of seeing this a little bit more at the collegiate level now. It really kind of started getting in like around 21 or 22, where they basically, it looks like kind of like a hybrid pro punt formation. Okay. We're still in shield right here with the left and right shield personal protector. Now LSU's on the punt as opposed to Arkansas, but now the gunners are out wide, and, they have their rules for, as you can see here, balls on the, like kind of the right middle here, and the left gunner, he's at the top of the numbers. The right gunner is probably like +4 or +4 to to the bottom of the hash mark right there, and covered inside, by the return team right there. So let's get into what the formations look like. Okay, so a lot of times, we talk about what at the professional level. You talk about what is like makeup, like physical makeup, like what is a guy like? What do we want our guys to look like, right? So oftentimes it happens in college. It's like, okay, let's just take a bunch of dudes from different positions and throw them in. Sometimes it's going to be, the defensive players that are going to wind up playing on the punt team because they'll already be on the field, so it's easier transition. It's like, okay, well, some guys, we just got to find a spot for them. And a couple of times, like when I was at Darlington, we didn't have a long snapper, so I had to develop a long snapper. And it was just a kid staying on the sideline. Hey, what are you doing right now? Nothing. Okay, come learn the long snap. So in Shield, the great thing about it, there are just like everything else in football, there are positives and negatives to everything. Okay, so let's talk about the negatives first. The negatives about Shield are these: you don't really block, and you're not really in. You allow the attempt to block to happen. Okay. If the snap is bad, it can take forever to get the ball off the floor unless you have a really good-handed punter, because it doesn't contain the outside rush, and it's something you're not really worried about. The whole crux behind Shield is you're worried about coverage, okay? Which is why when we talk about this in this form, like what are we looking for? Like what type of players are we going to put there, right? And when we get later on in the presentation, I'll show you exactly like what this looks like on the field. But typically what you want at the X and the Z is you want kind of like a bigger wide receiver, kind of like a middle-sized DB, maybe like a kid that's kind of like in between like a linebacker and a tight end, like one of those kids that just don't fit like someplace athletically, but he's fast enough to be able to get down the field. Okay. And then our tackle positions, we want middle skills, spurs, linebackers, athletic linebackers, nickelbacks, and then the same thing as we go into the guards. And I'll talk about the long snapper in a second. Now, in the Shield, it is very important. I know it sounds crazy, but you're going to have 2 to 3 offensive linemen in the Shield. Okay. It can be all 3 Shield guys. It can be all 3 Shield guys. It can be 2 of them, but it really can't be any less than 2, right? And the reason for that is because offensive linemen typically know how to block. See, the 6 of the 7 players on the line here generally are not blockers. They're the fastest guys we want to get out and cover the field. Okay. Now, the Shield, these are the guys that are going to protect the punter. And so you want to be able to have those individuals big enough to where they can at least move their feet, get their hands moving, right? And because we're all in 2-point stances, and I'll talk about that in a second, but we're all in 2-point stances, and you got to be able to block the outside guys. You got to be able to be mobile enough to block. Now, when we get into coverage, when I talk about coverage, the Shield guys, we're not really worried about them covering because we rely on the front 7 to cover. Okay. Long snapper. Now, sometimes what winds up happening in high school is that you just find a kid that does it. Okay. When I started at Darlington in 2019, our top wide receiver did it. And Danny was too valuable to us, so I had to develop a long snapper. So Eli Weatherford was our long snapper. Eli's in the Army now. He's a great kid. And so I had to teach Eli in a week how to long snap. And that was probably about week 4, week 5. And then he long snapped the rest of the season, and Danny was just able to go play wide receiver, defensive back, and kick returner because he was the fastest human on the team. And he ran a legit 4.6 40 his junior year in high school. So long snapper. Okay. So now we're talking like in terms of NFL a little bit in college, where like we're looking for certain size individuals to fit that role, right? Realistically, you don't want, I'm 5'8". I am not a prototypical long snapper because I have little T-Rex arms. Okay. So it's kind of difficult for me to affect a decent snap. Okay. Now, ideally what you want is like a cat that's like 5'10 to 6'1. If you're lucky to find a 6'3, 235, 245 pound linebacker, kid that, is built like a linebacker but can't play like one, well, chances are that if you teach him the long snap, he's going to wind up doing it at the next level if he gets good enough. Okay. Here, it's like we got to be able to have a human that's at least 5'10. Now, at Haynes, I love Matt Benora to death. He's a great kid. He plays 3 sports for us. I coached basketball with his dad this past season. Matt is not a prototypical long snapper. Matt's an inch taller than I am. Okay. And truthfully, admittedly, he'll tell you too. And if you watch the film, he bounced a lot of balls back, and it was very difficult at times for us to punt. So, and that just goes to technique. Okay. So, but yeah, so we want to be able to have kind of a taller individual long snapping. So splits. Now, think about this. So air raid guys, typical air raid split is 3 feet, right? So 1 yard. And when I learned how to coach shield punt, the original thinking was, okay, from tackle to tackle, we're 2 foot, we're 1 foot, 2 foot. And then to the X and Z, the outside gunners, we're 2 feet. Okay. There are times when you watch this when you watch teams run this alignment on Saturdays where the splits are 3 feet, maybe 4. Okay. And the only reason why is because you got fast dudes that are trying to clear out fast dudes. And so we're trying to get down the field as fast as possible. Okay. So our stance, let's talk about that, because stance is very important. A running back stance is a 2-point stance. Linebacker stance is a 2-point stance. Offensive lineman, pass pro, 2-point stance. What do we want the guys on this to do? 2-point stance. If you can teach any position how to get into a proper 2-point, a properly balanced 2-point stance, you can put any individual into this unit. It doesn't matter what position. Okay. And so how we do that is think about in terms of offensive line. Now, you D-line coaches should know this, but linebacker coaches and other people may not know this. Okay. So we're staggered. Our feet are staggered. Okay. So if I am to the right, if I'm to the right of the center, my inside foot's my left, right? And then my right foot is staggered back. And then the opposite to the left side. Okay. We're in a good athletic 2-point stance. We're balanced. We have our feet on the inside of our knees. Okay. Our hands, on the inside of our knees, like with our hands open, ready to attack. Okay. If you have a kid, if you stand in there and he has his hands on his knees, he's wasting a second of time. Okay. If he's not standing in a 2-point stance, he's wasting a second of time having to adjust his stance. Okay. But if you have him in a good balanced 2-point stance, hands on, like, wrists resting on the inside of the knees with his feet anchored in the ground and weight on the balls of the feet, he's going to be able to take that first step, lunge into the guy in front of him, and then get out and affect the coverage. So we're toes to heels of the long snapper from the guards out to the tight ends, gunners, whatever you want to call them. Okay. Talk about split difference again. So in spread shield, we're 2 feet. Okay. And when we split the wide receivers out, you can see in this drawing, like the way the field's drawn up. Typically what you want is the guy on the bottom here when we're in Vegas, which is left. Okay. So when we're in Vegas right here, we typically want him, and I put this a little too far out, but he really should be split the difference like right here, because typically here would be where the red line is. So what we want is this guy to be right here, splitting the difference between the bottom of the the bottom of the hash mark and the top of the number. And then on the other side, he can be anywhere from the top of the number to like where the divide would be, like where the red line would be right here between the top of the hash mark and the bottom of the number. Okay. And chances are is probably, if you spread out like this, chances are you're going to get a wide defensive line. You're going to have 2 guys playing inside technique to try to force these guys out to the boundary as fast as possible. So it really depends. Like if you have defensive backs that are really good with their hands, these are the cats that you want playing out here off the edges, because you know that they're going to be able to avoid and get out as quick as possible. Okay, so in wide shield, in a wide formation where we have the gunners attached, okay, we're in a 3-foot split. Okay, we look like an air raid team, the old school, pirate air raid team, right? 3-foot split, and again, we're toes to heels of the long snapper, good 2-point stance, and then with the toes of the shield guys at basically 6 yards, with the personal protector sitting on the hip of either the left or the right shield. Now, look, let's talk about the PP for a second. Okay, what is the personal protector's job in this formation? Well, if you go back to the pro formation, basically the personal protector is the guy that calls the coverage. He's the guy that calls the cadence, right? It's never the kicker. However you want your cadence to be. It can be blue. It can be blue 7, ready go, or 8-man. Say, hey, calling out, say, hey, it's an 8-man front. Whatever your cadence is, right? That's what you go with. So let's say, for instance, that your offense is on the clap. Well, it may not be the best idea to run a clap snap for punt. So then you got to come up with a cadence system. If you are a team that is if you're a spread team that's on the cadence system, teach the personal protector the cadence. Even if it's a defensive guy that's in there, teach them the cadence so that, hey, you can use it, because there may be a time where he has to go play offense, right? Or you're in some type of like wildcat where a fullback or running back or an H-back is calling the cadence from the backfield, right? So whatever you do terminology-wise, whatever you do cadence-wise on offense, whatever terminology you use, whether it's both sides of the ball, use it in special teams. Because the thing about it is that no matter what we do, when we teach block destruction, when we teach block avoidance, all the drill work that you see everybody on the web put out is effective for the most part. I'd say probably about 85% of the drill work you see can be applied to special teams if you don't have the time for it. Okay. So with that being said, let's go to here. So what does it look like when we're backed up? Okay. So when we're backed up, we're going to be in 6-inch splits, and we're toes to heels still of the long snapper. Okay. The toes of the shield guys are going to be like, if we're snapping from the 10, all right, anywhere between there, we're always, the shield is always at 7 yards. The toes of the shield are always at 7 yards, with the personal protector sitting on the inside hip. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a left call or a right call. It's really up to you which way you want the personal protector to sit. When I was at Darlington, we either had them sitting on either side, because it kind of dictated, like, our opponents didn't pick up on this, but it really kind of dictated. It's like, hey, if you see the PP on the right, punt to the right. If you're sitting on the left, punt to the left. Okay, so that's how we wanted that. But it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. What worked for me doesn't necessarily work for you. So figure out what works for you and then use that. Okay, split distance for the long snapper. It's personal protector. You're on the hip, left shield, right shield, 7 yards, and it doesn't matter whether you're like snapping from the 10 or the 5 or the 3. You're going to be at 7 yards. And like in this next slide, you'll see here, it's basically the same thing, except now when we're inside the -5, when we're inside the 5, and even to the goal line, we're foot to foot. Okay, we're using old school wing blocking techniques. We're foot to foot. Now, in each one of these instances, we're always blocking down to the gap because we're trying to get out of here as fast as we can. See, that's the biggest thing about this, is that even though you have individuals that don't normally know how to block, if you can just say, hey, block down to this guy and then get out as fast as you can, go find grass, get there as fast as you can. That's what we want, right? Which is why it goes to say that in this type of punt formation, again, the personnel does not matter. The personnel does not matter. Like, go find 6 of the fastest cats that you can find. And if the long snapper is a fast dude too, well, then he's going to be the number 7, right? Go find 6 of the fastest guys you can. If they're great with their hands, that's even more better for you, right? And so we're blocking down, getting out, and covering the field as fast as we can. All right, so let's talk about what the defense looks like here. All right, so remember what I said a minute or two ago, how everything looks the same, right? Exact same right here. We all recognize this. All right, defensive line positions, negative A, negative gaps, positive gaps. Okay, and in a minute here, I'll talk about why it's numbered 1 to 8 from what looks like the defense is right, which is the defense is right, our left. Okay, and then our D line techniques are the exact same too. So again, like whatever terminology you use, if you're a defensive line coach and you tell your guys, hey, I need you in a 2-eye, right? You know where to go. Your offensive linemen know what a 2-eye. If you teach your guys the way I do, your offensive linemen know what a 2-eye or a 4-eye or a 5 or a 7 look like, right? So teach whatever vernacular you use on a daily basis with those position groups. Man, teach that, use that, right? Because that's in your dictionary. That's in your lexicon, right? So make sure you use that. Don't just like say, oh, we got to use a whole different dictionary for special teams. No, just whatever you use on a daily basis, right? So we talk about D-line recognition in number 1, spur and tackle nose. And again, using the same terminology we always use. Okay. Same thing here for our linebacker recognition. Now we're using double numbers again, and I still talk. And whenever I talk teams, this is the terminology I use because I was a D-line coach once, right? So sometimes we need to teach our guys this. Okay. So in high school, you cannot cover the long snapper. Okay. So the will and the Mike or the middle guy has to be off the line of scrimmage and can't be in the A gap, no matter what. Okay. So the gap responsibility for Will and Mike, depending on like how you want to turn the formation. If it's balanced, it's whichever side the personal protector is on. That's how you're gonna set your blocking scheme. That's how you're gonna set your rushing scheme. Excuse me. So we're looking coverage responsibility, aspire long snapper right here. Okay. So basically what happens is this, like, let's say this cat is right here and the mic's sitting like out here. Okay. So this cat right here, his responsibility is to try to take the long snapper off of his route, as we're using displacement as he's trying to come through that second level. Okay. So now let's look at the fronts. Like, what does this look like on film? Okay. How does this look? Okay. So count system rush labeling. When we're looking, we don't really have at the collegiate level and the NFL level, those of us who are fortunate enough to subscribe to NFL Plus or NFL Pro, we're used to seeing the all 22, right? If whatever, there's like a bunch of guys, a bunch of coaches. John Croyle is a guy that I use, and I gladly pay for his services because he does such a phenomenal job. Shout out to Coach Croyle. You get to see the all 22 from college, but we don't really have that luxury in high school, right? So we'll be able to talk about that here in a few minutes. But from the collegiate aspect, NFL aspect, when you see it from the end zone, right? So what we're looking at here is that we're counting from the outside in. Doesn't matter where it's left side or right side. We're counting from the right side in. So you can see that I labeled this as a 46 double mug. All right. So left side for us, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have everybody's covered right here. The long snapper technically is covered in both gaps. Okay. The right guard right here is covered. The right tackle is covered, but we're not worried about covered and uncovered like if we're calling duo plays or zone runs. All right. We're counting from out here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we use the long snapper as the divider. Okay. So if I look at it on film and I look at the long snapper, I'm counting. It's kind of difficult if it's a little bit harder in high school. I've come to find out. I'm trying to watch film because, Coach Steve, as you know, coaching high school football like I do, like the video quality ain't super awesomely great.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get cats that like you get zoomed out wide, and it's like, okay, I have to zoom in to huddle as far as I can go and kind of squint and go 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Is he in the gap? So here we have this luxury, right? So it's a double mug. I call it a double mug right here because why? We have a guy in the A gap here. We have 2 guys in the A gap here. I could probably call it a triple mug or give it a name. It doesn't exist yet, but hey, this is what I like to use. Okay. So count from left to right. use the long snapper as a divider and use the same terminology as I said before. Okay, so now let's count when we give assignments. Okay, so at Darlington, I started using it this way because it just made the most sense to me. Okay, makes sense to me. It may not make sense to you, but hey, go ahead and be my guest. Use it, please. All right. So as we're looking at this, we're counting from 1 to 0. All right. Oh, wait a minute. That's 10. Yeah, I know. When you put it on a diagram, 10 don't look right. So it goes to 0. All right. So I'm going to tell my X is like, hey, you got 1. I'm telling my tackle, you got 2. Guard, you got 3. Long snapper, down to 4, and then get out. Okay. Right shield's got number 5, and then so on as we go down the line. Okay. So again, we're assigning the blocking with the numbered player head up or in the gap. Covered or uncovered, if they're in a gap. We're always looking to the gap, like in this instance, like you see number 54 here, he's an offensive lineman, right? He's set to the right. So pretty much let's talk about it like how we would talk about duo. Okay. So our priority gap is to the right. If the punt's going out to the right, then our priority gap is to the right. Oh, excuse me. Priority gap would be to the left if we're going right. Excuse me. All right. So we're looking for our priority gap, basically. Okay. So if the ball's going to the right, we're looking to the right. Ball's going to the left, we're going to the left. That's theoretically how it's supposed to be done. Okay. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go down and we're going to block. So we'll talk about this here now in coverage. So let's talk about coverage here for a minute. Okay. So Raymond Jennings, who was my head coach at Darlington back for 2 seasons in 19 and 20, he was a former special teams guy. And so we talked, this is how we kind of looked at the whole field. All right. So we know that from the 15 into the goal line, the minus 15 into the goal line, we're going to punt. Don't matter if it's 4th and 25. If it's 4th and 7+, we're punting. Okay, because we really don't want to. We don't want a turnover right here. We don't want to give the other team the ball right here. So we know that here we're definitely going to kick for sure, unless it's like 4th and 2. All right. So 4th and 1, 4th and 2. This is where you can kind of put your thinking cap on. It's like, okay, look at your game plan. It's like, well, we've been running the ball pretty well. We'll run power, run duo, whatever. We'll run an RPO to kind of get us out of the situation and get a first down, right? But chances are 8 times out of 10, when you're between the minus 15 and the minus 40, you're punting the ball if it's like 4th and 5 or more, okay? Between the 40s is what we call open field or possible. So that means that open field is like, okay, if we need a momentum play, it's late in the game, we need a momentum play, let's go for it here, right? So in our kicked and backed up areas, we know that basically up until the point of the game where the score is not tight, it doesn't matter what happens here. We're probably more than likely going to punt on 4th and 5 or more. Here, it's like, hey, I need to get it play. I need a momentum play. That's open field. It's like we can either kick or punt right here because of where we are in the field. Possible means that, hey, we may be able to pull a fake right here. But in this area where it says kicked and this area where it says backed up, 9 times out of 10, I'm not running a fake. I'm not running a fake punt unless the defense gives it to me. And what I mean by that is that they give me a look. It's like, okay, we punt. At some place in the second, like we're in like the middle 8 right there. Someplace at the first half of the middle 8 or the back half, like we're down maybe 2 touchdowns or we're down 10. Let's run a fake. Let's see if it can happen. Now, it's harder, I think, to fake out of shield because of the personnel you have on the field. But if you're wicked smart about it, you can kind of play with the personnel a little bit and have somebody that's more athletic in the shield and then like direct snap. And then you can run, you can run 19,000 things out of that. You can turn it all into like a zone block it. You can turn it into slide. You can throw off of that. You can run leak off of that. You can do 1,000,001 things off of that if you have the right personnel. And then it's probably the same. It's the same no matter if you're running an offense. Okay. So sometimes we don't talk about this. I talk about this. I haven't come across so many people that do. So I developed this philosophy when I was at Darlington because we punted so much. Like, we led the world in punting in 2020. I think we punted more than any team in South Carolina that season, to be honest. So certain field positions call for specific kick types, okay? And it's based on field position. So in this chart, the terms drive and hang are used, and this indicates to the punter and the return team to which type of kick it indicates to the punter and our coverage team, what type of kick to expect. So if we drive the ball, it's going to be on a lower trajectory. It's placed in a certain zone of the field. If we hang the ball, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to have the kick in the air for at least 3.5 seconds. We want good hang time on that so we can get the coverage down the field. Now, normally what I would do is I would take the field and I would divide it make it like a tic-tac-toe, make it like tic-tac-toe. You have 9 zones, okay? So from the line of scrimmage to let's say 20 yards out, 10 yards out, okay? That's 1, 2, and 3. And then anything in the middle is 4, 5, and 6. And the back is 7, 8, 9, okay? And you always number it left to right because, hey, that's the way you're facing. So you want it's the third quarter. You're down 10. The drive stalled out. You're between the 40s. You're on the right side. You're on the left side. You have a right foot kicker. You want to pin him back a little bit. The kid can drive the ball, right? It's like, okay, I want to go Reno, and I want to drive to 9. Okay. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to hang that ball. We're going to try to maximize our hang time, and we're going to put it in the back right corner of our coverage zone, okay, to where when we cover, we can pin them down. And typically that back right coverage zone is from the hash mark, the bottom of the hash mark to the sideline, right? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to pin them. We're trying to force them to the sideline, close out, right? Close out there to the field, and then push him to the boundary and limit the amount of space he has in the return. Okay. So if we're trying to hang it, we're doing that. If we're trying to drive the ball, it's a lower trajectory kick. So we're hanging the ball, it's going like this. If we're trying to drive the ball, it's more like that. Right. So, and it's really and to get into kind of some minutia of it. So you have different the different ways to hold the ball, right? So you have basically we have the normal flat hold where we drop, and then you hang it. You have the Australian drop. So if you have a punter that's fortunate, that's good enough to be able to do both the Australian style and the regular style, in the hang, he can take the ball and just kick the heck out of it as far as he can, right? We want to try to get that ball up. If it's the Australian style, the ball kind of turns over a little bit more. It won't travel as far. It'll go higher on a different type of arc, depending on where the foot strikes the ball. Okay. I'm fortunate that I'm fortunate that we had a punter that was able to do that. All right, so let's talk about punt coverage and let's talk about punt coverage, lanes, and zones. All right, so we're going down the field. All right, we're going down the field, and we have the sideline. We have 2 sidelines, 2 alleys, and a chute. All right, so I took this from the University of Sun, from USC. This came out of Pete Carroll's special teams guys. You can use this on kickoff too. Okay. So the sideline's the top of the number to the sideline, right? The alley is the top of the number to about, let's say probably +5 into the middle of the field, and the chute is literally down the middle of the field. Okay. And then Chris McEwen, who is the guy I coached for in Knoxville, gave me this one with the different types of zones. So from the bottom there to about where you would see the yellow meet into the green, 7 yards to 8 yards is what we call the avoid collision zone. Now, what that means is that as we come off the line of scrimmage, we're trying to use avoid technique to get around the defenders. We're also trying to maximize the collisions to try to get them on their heels or get them on their back. And yes, you can give pancakes on special teams coverage. Okay, remember this: punt is even though the punt is a defensive play. Okay, kicks are defensive plays because all the players get they get credits for tackles. Okay, kick returns are offensive plays because you get credit for yards and touchdowns. Okay, but you can credit guys who cover punt with pancakes. So there's kind of like, oh, I can get a pancake. Oh, I can get a sticker for that. Yeah, I can get a T-shirt. I can get some syrup in my mouth. Let's go. Okay. So the speed zone means that we're going as fast as we can. All right. Now it looks smaller because I had to put in a smaller field, but really, like in reality, in punt, it's about the next 10 yards after you get from the second level into the secondary. Then the attack zone is that last 8 yards to the toes of the returner. Okay. So we all borrow from other people, and you heard I just took 2 things from 2 people. So this is a third thing I took from somebody. Willie Fritz, head coach at the University of Houston, former Tulane head coach. In Willie's previous life, he was a special teams coordinator. And he was at Tulane. He made sure to run special teams. I took this from him. Okay. So this is what we're talking about ball heavy and force players. Okay. So we're covering down the field. It's vitally important to get to the returner as fast as possible while giving him the least amount of space. So for this reason, we cover the ball first and landmark second. So to execute this, we cover with 3 tags: ball heavy and force. The ball players are the first 2 players down the field. Now this could be the gunners. This could be the guards. This could be a long snapper and a guard. It can be the long snapper and a gunner. Chances are in high school, it's probably going to be the long snapper if he's good enough to get through the first wave of the linebackers. Okay. At Darlington, my second season, I had this kid, Tim Smith, and Tim was 6'3" and built like a wet piece of spaghetti. But the one thing that Tim was able to do was that he worked on a void technique at practice every day. And so he wasn't the fastest cat, but the thing about it is that he was able to force the returner to the direction that we wanted him to go to. So if I called a Vegas punt, we're kicking to the left. He's getting down the field and trying to force the return into the right, and vice versa when we call Reno. Excuse me. So Tim was wicked good about that. Okay. Our heavy players, these are the second group of guys, and they're spaced 4x4. So they're 4 yards back and 4 yards out from the outside shoulder of the ball guys. Okay. So the field side players should be really slow to cross the hash. Okay. So think about it like this: so the ball guys come down the field and they get there first. So the heavy guys are now on the outside shoulder of the ball guys, and what we want them to do is we want them to not go through the hash mark. So if the ball is in the middle of the field, they're going to stay outside of it. If it's to the left, the guy that's on the right is going to take his time and read what's going on before he crosses the hash mark. Okay. And it's the same thing if we riverside it and go to the right. Now, the force guys is the third group, and they're going to be 8x8. Okay. So it's 8 yards behind and 8 yards out from the outside shoulder of the heavy guys. So basically what we're doing is we're creating this wedge that's going to come down the field and is going to attack the returner. Okay. So the field side players, again, should be slowed across the middle of the field. So if the ball is to the right and we're trying to the ball's punted to the left and we're trying to force the kick to the left, we're trying to force the returner to that side, right? The heavy guy and the force players aren't going to cross the hash marks until he's down around the numbers to the boundary side of the numbers, right? And then we can see it's like, okay, now we're going to cross and get into that coverage. Okay. 2 things. 1, don't follow your own color. Okay. It's vitally important when we affect the coverage down the field. not only do we want to not follow our own cover, we don't want to stack. Because what happens a lot of time in high school is like, oh, okay, I just run behind him. You can't do that because it's not an effective coverage, because what's happening is that when you start to stack, you're giving up field position. So if the returner gets ahead, gets past the ball players and gets into where the heavy guys would be, and the force guy is behind the heavy guy, you've now given the returner an alley down the sideline to be able to return the ball for a touchdown. Okay, so it's vitally important that we don't follow our own color and we don't stack. Lane discipline, like in kickoffs, like if I could spend 20 minutes talking about kickoffs, I would, but it's the same thing. When we tell guys to cover down in our lanes in kickoff, we're doing the exact same thing in punt. Okay, covering a lane, not stacking, not getting behind colors. Okay, so this is what it actually looks like on the field in our vertical progression. Okay, so now we're getting wide, and we're trying to widen the field as much as possible, but also trying to make it as narrow as possible as well. So the ball guys, heavy guys, and force guys, as you see there. And remember, the heavy guys are 4x4 to the outside shoulder, and the force guys are 8x8 to the outside shoulder of those guys. Okay. Let's talk about our horizontal progression. Stole this from Alabama. Okay. Yes, I borrow from everybody because it's just stuff makes sense to me, right? Dude, I have tons of playbooks, offense, defense, and special teams. I borrow from everybody. Like my offense is Dirk Cutter's offense when he was in Tampa Bay in 2018. Why? Because it makes the most sense to me, right? That's why shield is that's why this type of punt is so easy to put in, because everybody uses it. It's the easiest and quickest thing to install. You can put anybody in it, and you can borrow stuff from everybody else. Okay, so let's talk about this graphic here. So we have the protection zone, the coverage zone, and the defensive zone. All right, so the protection zone, we're protecting cover, of course, and that's going to go for about the first 5 to 7 yards as we get off the line of scrimmage. Now we're in the coverage zone, so as we come up, right, so first we were in the avoid zone, so now we're in the attack zone, okay? So now we're in the speed zone, right, which is this green area here. So now we're trying to get down the field as fast as possible, and then when we get into the defensive zone, that's when we get into the attack mode, and we're going to net and tackle to here, and hopefully our ball guys make the tackle, because ideally what we want is we want the ball players to always make the tackle, okay? Second, we want the force players, and third, we want the heavies. We really rarely don't want the heavy guys making tackles. We want the ball guys, however that looks, to make the tackles first. Okay, so talk about protection schemes. Okay, so kind of weird. Here's what you can do. This is where offensive line guys can kind of like go, yes, I can do this. This is cool. Okay, so you can use zone protection. You can use slide. You can use jet protection. You can use any type of protection you want in shield. I know it sounds crazy, but just when you see it on film, it's like, okay, I recognize it. Okay, well, it's jet protection, it's slide, it's half man, half slide, whatever you want. Okay, if we do this in man protection, what we're essentially doing is this. Okay, I gotta say this. Okay, so I do have, like in my playbook, I have left, right, and middle. Never, ever, 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 did I say never? Never kick the ball down the middle of the field. If you're between the hash marks, whether you're at the college level or the pro level, dude, don't kick the ball down the middle of the field. Too many bad things can happen. All right. So we're always kicking to the hash marks. We're always kicking out, try to get out behind the hash marks, like out wide of the hash marks. Ideally, where we want the punt to be the top of the number or the bottom of the number toward the boundary side, ideally. Now we know that, hey, the lack of time that we have at the high school level, the lack of skill that we have to be able to, it's like you just put Johnny offensive lineman in the backfield and he can punt the ball. And the kid's 5'10" and 325 pounds, but he's the only one that can punt the ball. Okay, great. And I've seen it happen so many times here in Louisiana. When I was coaching in South Carolina, it always happens like that. So what we're doing is we're basically blocking down. Okay, so it's all down blocks. Okay, so we're blocking down to the direction that we want to go. So if we're on the left hash, even if we're on the left hash and we want to kick the ball to the right, we're blocking down to the right. Okay, and that's why it's important to be in the 2 foot that 2-point stance, because you can affect that down block real easy. Okay, so offensive line coaches, again, teach reach technique. Very simple. Okay, it's a drill I do with my offense. It's a drill we do with our offensive linemen at our high school, and we do it with our middle school players every day. Okay, basically we're stepping down and we're reaching across the human. Okay, with our arm to whatever side we're going to. So if we're going to the right, we're trying to reach the armpit of the right. We're stepping down, and first step is going to be down to the outside shoulder of the guy that we're reaching. We're reaching the armpit, and we're trying to pin with our backside hand, with our left in this case. So we're trying to pin the arm down, step out and drive them, and then we're going to snatch and release, and then get up the field. Okay. And it's going to be the same thing if we go to the other direction, right? So we're stepping out to the left. We're reaching with our left, stepping with our left, right? That's our aiming points there. Pin with the right hand, drive, sit and drive, snatch and release, and then go and get the ball. Okay. So we're blocking down. Now we talk about like landmarks right here. Okay. So if I'm releasing, what I want to do is this. It's like I want to tell these guys, it's like, okay, we can all see like where the pylons are on the field, right? We all see where the goalpost is. Some of them have the double put, some of them have the H, some of them have like the NFL style, college style, gimmick like that, right? So what we're trying to do is this. It's like, okay, if I'm talking to the X, what I'm telling them is this. It's like I'm trying to get down and I want to get outside of the bottom of the numbers. Okay. Because chances are my long snapper and one of my guards, those are going to be my ball players. All right. Now, if it's my faster guys, then what I'm going to do is like, okay, go tell X and Z. It's like, hey, you guys are the ball players. The force players are the tackles, and the heavy players are the guards, right? Because those are going to be the last cats out. And if we're doing that, then it's like, okay, well, what's my landmark? Okay, well, I want him, like, let's say, for example, that the guard, like our X and our Z, those are our ball players. So they're going to go run to the toes. They're going to go run to the toes of the returner. But if I want the tackle to get out, okay, we all know that there's a pylon somewhere in the middle that's sitting on the hash marks, right? And so what I want him to aim for that area between the back corner and the hash mark pylon. Okay. I want the long snapper to kind of like figure out like where the hash mark pylon and the goalpost is, and that's where you're going to go. That's your alley. Okay. Because chances are the long snapper is going to be kind of a bigger guy. If he's not very good on avoid technique, he's going to be held up by a linebacker. Okay. So we want to be able to get that. And so we want to be able to find those hash marks. Well, so what are our hash marks? The pylons. And if you can't see the pylons, look for the numbers and the hash marks on the field. If you don't see either one of those, get better contacts. I don't know. All right. What are we doing with the shield? The shield's blocking. The shield's responsibilities are these. If I'm the left shield, okay, I'm blocking negative A to negative B. Okay. So any cat that is rushing through the A gap here or the B gap here, that's the left shield's responsibility. The positive A gap responsibility is the right shield, and anybody that's coming up the middle is the PP or the middle shield's responsibility. That's why it's vitally important, because if you're a passing team that's used to just standing there, if you're used to just what I call lock, which is just straight up man protection, you have offensive linemen that are used to blocking man protection. They're not going to move very much, and you don't want them to move unless you're like running like a rugby style punt. Okay. So, and you want the personal protector to step into that alley, and like really, like theoretically, it should be like maybe 6 inches to a foot between those cats. You don't want them like super tight, because here's the thing. The punter's heels have to be at 15. They have to be. Okay. And there's a couple of things that go into this real quick. So number one is what we call op time. So our operational time. That's the time. That's the amount of time it takes from the ball, from the snap to the putting the kick in the phase. Okay. That op time has to be somewhere between like 0.66 to 0.75. Okay. If it's like 0.8 to 1.0, it's not good because you're going to get the punt block. Okay. It means the ball it's getting snapped too slow. Okay. 0.66, I'd say, I'm saying, other people may say differently. I'm saying 0.66 to 0.75. So that means 66 hundredths of a second to 75 hundredths of a second. That's how quick this operation has to get off. Number two, the distance between the shield, the reason why you tell the shield to stand at 7 yards and the punter at 15 is because you literally do not want the ball to go up the butt of the middle shield guy. Okay. Even if we're backed up, it's a different story. If we're inside the 10, if we're inside the 5, the shield has to be a little bit tighter. It's going to happen. Okay. Unless you have a really good punter, and then it's like, okay, push the shield up to about 5 yards as opposed to 7. So that way the punter's got a little bit distance to kick. All right. Because here's the thing. If you have a punter has a long step, because it's 3 steps, right? So we catch on the first, we start the approach in the second, and we're swinging up and through in the ball in the third. In that third step, if you have a punter that's got a long foot and he puts the nose of the ball out and it hits the punter in the back, it hits the shield in the back, that's because they're too close. They're set at 8 yards, because chances are that kid's gonna walk 7 yards, depending on his stride length. Okay. So James Melton, who was our punter at Darlington back in 2020, he was like a 5'10" kid, but he had kind of like a longer stride. So yeah, the shield had to be at 7 yards. Okay. You have a shorter guy and he has shorter steps. You can maybe push it back to 8, but you need to have that shield at 7 yards so that way the ball can get kicked over the shield. Right. And it's the same thing if like we're doing a rugby style shield punt where we slide everybody. It's imperative that the shield stay in front of the punter, because if we widen a gap, if we get off the punter gets outside the shield, the protection goes to poop, because, well, it's rendered everything ineffective. Okay, so this is what it looks like at the college level. This is South Alabama versus LSU from this season. Okay, so now you're like, oh, well, wait, you can huddle? Yeah, you can huddle. And you can see USA here, like, runs a sugar huddle and they break out. Okay. You can put a man in motion. They set him like in the H position right here. The long snap goes off. The shield slides. And if you notice here real quick, what's that distance? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So the heels of the shield are at 7 yards. Here's the punter's heels at 15, right? Now, a lot of times what I saw a lot this season here in Louisiana, like where I coach, is that a lot of teams just basically play a base defense against this because, hey, I don't know. It's just, you can defend it against anything. Okay. So here LSU's playing a 4-man front. Okay. You got 2 9s. There's a 1 tech. There's a 5. There looks like there's a 4-eye or a 3 right there. Okay. And so what they're doing is, like, you see the leverage that they're giving them, like 10, like maybe, I think it looks like 7 to 8 yards here, like cushion from where they're going to run off. Snap comes up, shield slides to protect the punter. The ball is kicked, and look where it winds up, inside the numbers. The coverage gets down the field, rendering the return ineffective. Okay, go on the phase. Now looking at it from the end zone. Okay, so before we put our boy into motion right here. All right, 3 tech. Here's a 2-eye. Here's a 9. Here's a 9. Okay. Look at their split distance right here. They're 3. It's about 3 yards. Okay. This is commonly what you see now at the collegiate level. What they'll do here, what South Al will do here, is they'll put the H in the motion here, set them here to affect the block right here, number 35. And we sit Slides like, hey, I got him. Hey, it's like, hey, get him. All right. So now the shield slides over. We're in phase. And if you watch the long snapper, how quick he gets off, watch how he uses his hands. He got off real quick. Why? Because we're kind of stunting to that. We're kind of stunting to the guard right here in that 2-eye. That's a good job of getting ground right here. And look how he drives. He's driving off his outside leg right here, puts his hands across, he puts his head across, his eyes are up. He's in a good position here to block the 2-tech, where now the long snapper will release. So, two fastest guys, the gunners, right? The wide guys, those are our ball guys. Our heavy guys in this instance are going to be the long snapper and the guard and the right guard. And then our force guys, the two out, or the two deepest guys right here and right here. Okay. So we know, if you know anything about rules in the NFL, you know that you can't run shield punt in the NFL. I had this conversation a year or so ago with Darren Rizzi. And I asked him, who's now the special teams coordinator for Denver Broncos, formerly the New Orleans Saints interim head coach. And I asked Riz, I said, why can't you run shield in the NFL? And to save a 20-minute conversation, basically this: you can't have more than 4 people in the backfield. And where the gunners are, they can't be more than 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. Okay. Now, this is from this season against the Rams in the Superdome. Here's Taysom Hill, who we all love here. I hope they re-sign him to a bigger contract because he deserves it. He needs to get all of his injuries. But he's our personal protector. Now, you see the alignment, okay? Now, you see a lot of teams in college run this similar alignment, okay? And you'll see it when we get down the field here. The gunners are out wide, and we're covering, okay? Great job here by he calls fair catch. Why? Because the ball guy, the left gunner gets down the right gunner gets down the field as fast as humanly possible. Ball guy, heavy force players right here, right? Taysom Hill's way back here. He's the PP, okay? The punter's way back here. Here's the two. Here's the two gunners, right, or the two wing guys right there. Okay. So, and I use the end zone because it kind of gives us a little bit better perspective. All right. So tighter split right here. All right. We're got like a regular offensive passing splits here. We're watching the ball here. Now look, it's very important to do this. If you're in a situation like this in the Superdome, right? You're in Caesars Superdome. It's Sunday afternoon. It's as loud as it can be. You're Saturday night at Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge. It's as loud as it can be. All right. You're at Memorial Stadium for the Illini, right? As loud as it can be on a Big Ten Saturday. You got Northwestern playing. They're playing at Wrigley Field this past season, right? In Wrigley, 23,000 people, and they're right on top of you, and it's really loud. So what do? You can't listen for the signal. So what do? You're watching the ball. As soon as the ball gets snapped, bam, Bob's your uncle. You get off. Okay? And that's what these guys are doing. They're looking at the ball. As soon as they're watching for the snap, and then they get off. And if you watch like how they block this, it looks like shield plow. Look, it's a slide protection. Punter gets the ball off. It almost got blocked because, well, we got too much depth. Okay? So let's see what it looks like here in high school. This is us in our playoff game against the Struma this season. Like I said, we finished the season 9-0. We were number 4 in the state. We got the number 4 seed in the playoffs. We got a bye in the second round. To play the Struma at home, they beat us by a lot. We punted more than we normally do. Okay, so here we are. Now look, I coach where I coach is basically like coaching Division 3 football at the high school level. We're the number 49th ranked high school academically in the United States. We're the number 1 ranked high school academically in the state of Louisiana. Athletically, we're very good. We won the state volleyball championship at Division III for girls. We don't play boys volleyball here in Louisiana. We have numerous state champions, individual state champions in swimming and cross country. So Haynes Academy, we have a lot of athletes, but the average ACT score is 30. The average GPA is a 3.76. We have smart kids. We don't get big athletic kids. Okay, admittedly. So we got to do a lot with a little, right? I think a lot of us who coach at lower levels, like coach 8-man football and some 6-man football in some states that see this, they're going to be like, Coach, I know exactly what you're talking about. We do a lot with a little bit. All right. So here's my boy Brad back here. His heels are at 15 yards. Okay, the shield's here at 7. You snap the ball. Okay, so now our middle shield here is here. Okay, and he's searching. He's looking for guys. He's looking for that rush. All right, so now we're trying to get off. Trying to get off as fast as possible. Now look at the distance between the back of the shield and where Brad's kicking the ball. That's great extension by Brad, by the way. And he's an offensive lineman. He's probably going to move into an H-back this season. We get down the field and we allow not very much coverage. We allow not a return. I think there was a 1-yard return off of a 39-yard punt. Okay. So what we're doing here, okay, Mapanor is our snapper. Good snap right here. Okay, now you see our left shield here. Dakota, I love him to death. He's our starting center. He'll be our starting center again his senior year coming up. Not a very good job here, admittedly, because he's not square. Okay, we don't ever want to turn and open the door up for the outside rush because, hey, you can get beat very easily by getting a stab move, by the outside rusher to that outside shoulder, and he's turned, and now you've opened the door. So we want to stay square so we can take those blocks on square, right, and make that block as effective as possible to hold up. This is what I was talking about shield, okay, about coverage, okay? It's more important in shield for coverage than it is to hold up, okay? You saw how we were pinned back. So the best way to get us out of here is to punt the ball. Here's our 2 ball players. Here's our 2 force players. Here's one of our heavy players. The other heavy player is coming on the backside, okay? We do a really good job of affecting our coverage right here, getting down the field. Okay,
Coach, I probably have one more minute or two, then I got to do the next one.
Okay, I'm going to get out of here. So, all right. So, showed you guys enough. Sorry I talked to you all zero off tonight. I really appreciate y'all's time and watching me do this. Here's my contact info again. If y'all want to talk to me, talk more about this, please feel free to give me a shout anytime. My phone's always on. My email's always open. I'm always on X. I'm on Threads as well. That being said, thanks for having me on, Coach Steve. I appreciate it. And good luck to everybody this upcoming season. Oh, and a real quick shout out to my guys at Goose Egg. It's